All right, now continuing with this digital caricature, I've already done my sketches, just my speed painting sketches, but now I'm trying to get to know the structure of their faces. And this one, the face itself is curved a little bit, and my sketch is curved a little bit. So that makes sense. But this one, my sketch is curved, and I think that's nice to have them kind of looking towards each other as the couple. But the reference is not. The reference is straight on. And you don't want to be a slave to your reference, right? So now what I can do with this information is I can curve those proportions and see how that face would look if it's moved a little bit, if it's rotated a little bit. But before I do that, let me finish off my last facial template here. Do it on my layer, cut that head in half. Notice the angle of the head that I'm using, which is not from the photo, it's from my own composition. Look at the spacing of the eyes. You'll see the same trends in family members. It's fascinating to see how people age. The shape of the skull. Now this one is actually, it's not quite straight on. And I can notice that immediately because this space of the eye is much wider than this space. So that means I can't use a straight line down the middle, even though it might have initially looked that way. Instead, I have to curve it slightly. And I can play that up in my final painting. And then what's interesting here is that the nose goes a little bit beyond the eye width. He's kind of growing into his nose. And then the ears, like his little brother, go above the eye line and below the nose line because that nose is still growing. The ears and the nose are both cartilage. They grow consistently through your life. They don't stop at puberty. So by the time you're an adult, your ears fit nicely between your eye line and your nose line. But some people have bigger ears than others. And then as you grow older, like hers fit right in between, as you get older and older, they extend beyond again. But you also have a much bigger nose then. So being a young child and being a really, really old person, you pretty much look the same. Because here you have baby teeth. As an old person, you've lost your teeth. The only difference, your ears are big in both sets. The only difference is that the nose is so much bigger on older people that the eyes look like they're sunken in because of all the shadows around the nose. That's just because ears and noses grow continuously. The shape of the eyes can be important. These are all very almond-shaped eyes. The only person whose eyes are not almond-shaped and are slightly more diamond-shaped are hers. And you see how they have kind of that hard angle at the edge. I'll definitely play that up in the caricature. But both the boys get their eyes from him. Having done a lot of caricatures, I can always kind of tell what traits come from what parents. And I always wish that Maury Povich would do a paternity test show just using caricature artists. I think it would be entertaining. Might be a dated reference though. All right. You're also noticing other things as you're just mapping the template. You're noticing things like what their sideburns look like, what their hairlines look like. He's got the most interesting hairline because of the little bangs here broken up and the pointy sideburns. So things that make an individual difference for the personality of each person is going to be very helpful and is kind of key to caricature. All right, now that I've got those, now I can have fun with them. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this layer, just so I have my realistic templates here. Then I'll turn that one off. And now with my duplicate, I am going to distort them a little bit, starting with the most dramatic. So starting with the father, I want to make his head go from being straight to being turned, like that. So what do? I can play with warping it, starting to curve that center line a little bit, push and pull it, rotating that egg shape, right? And you can see the difference. Now it looks like he's turning versus going straight. And does that fit my sketch? Yeah, almost exactly. It's the right idea. I made the ear pretty big in my sketch. For his proportions, the way his ears are formed, the ear is not going to be that big. I can play with his cheeks and play with that profile a little bit more, but that's a good basic shape to kind of work with. All right, and then his face, my sketch for him is all off. So what I'm going to do instead is just take the sketch and move it up a little bit. Make him seem older. I want to line up his eyes a little bit bigger. And I can also just stretch the head a little bit longer. And that will make him look a little bit older than his little brother too, which all older brothers enjoy. And if I want to warp it, I can play with the angle and the curvature a little bit as well, curving that line down the middle of his face to match my sketch, but still maintain his proportions. So what's that difference? Well, it's this instead of that. Okay, now her head maybe feels, I was going to say a little bit small, but I think that's just because I drew kind of inside the line. So maybe I'll just enlarge this a little bit, push and pull it. She has a lot of hair built up that's going to make her head look larger, but I don't want her face to feel small. So let me just enlarge that. Line it up a little bit with what I've sketched and maybe warp it a bit. I'm exaggerating her nose a little bit in my sketch, so I can pull my shape to match that. Now I'm going for a pretty flattering caricature. I'm not trying to be mean or point out any weirdness in their facial proportions, and I'm not trying to satirize them, right? But that doesn't mean I can't play with different facial shapes. If I wanted to go really extreme, I'll make a duplicate there. Well, I certainly could. So I can make her face would translate pretty well as a long face, right? So that might be the caricature I would use for her face. And maybe I can get away with it and still have it look nice. I don't know. Because she has a long neck, tall forehead. Kind of push and pull these proportions. Maybe I will. We'll see. So that's quite a bit different than that, right? But still has the potential to look like her. This fine gentleman, if I'm making it more extreme, I could definitely play with how rectangular his jaw is. How kind of solid his structure is. Make him a little bit more jowly, like that. And then the kids, always fun to make fun of how kids look. I can exaggerate the size of the ears. I can make him even into more of kind of a light bulb shaped head. Like that. Still keep his cuteness. Just using the warp tool. And I'm looking at it at the same time. I'm trying to figure out kind of what works. Right? And then the older brother, he just looks so earnest. I don't know. What can I bring out? more about his posture and maybe his cheeks. He has these big apple cheeks that I can play with. So that's going to be more in the shapes I use. So I'm just working with the positioning here. Okay. So I'm going to kind of settle them in where I want them. I want to leave kind of space for his suit and space for her dress, but cover a lot of it up with the kids. Because this is about the faces after all. And I have to choose, do I want this or do I want this, right? Neither of which is actually based on the photo reality. But this photo reality, even composed towards my sketch, looks pretty disjointed. And I like this. I'm liking more personality. So I'm going to go with kind of the bigger caricature. It's still not mean. Remember, caricatures can get quite extreme using this approach. And you can, let's see, do I have that open? If you remember the examples from my first demo of this, you can get a lot of variations to how you exaggerate someone's face, some of which fit better than others, right? Lengthening it, exaggerating cheekbones, chins. But all of these have to take into account the proportions of the face as they are. And they have to keep those intact, otherwise you lose likeness. So that's why I'll draw a realistic template and then I'll distort it, because proportionally he still has very little space between his nose and his upper lip. All the proportions are right. All the proportions are right, even though I've elongated her jaw. So on and so on. All right, so I think I can work with this. Okay, so I'm going to mark that as my sketch layer. Now I'll turn on my flat color behind, and I'm going to dim it to about 50%. And now I'll start my real painting. Okay, so my basic shape layer, I'm going to take this down to about 50%, and I'm going to set it on multiply mode so that everything I paint is underneath it and shows up. Now I'm going to save this. I haven't saved this for a while. And now I'm ready to do my informed caricature painting. And I'm going to do this person by person. So I'm going to start with her. I'm going to zoom in on her a little bit. You can see that the photo is not a high quality image. It's just an emailed photo. But my painting will be high quality. I'm going to use my 100% opacity brush, maybe a little bit smaller this time. I'm going to steal a color, but I have to put it on my paint layer. So I'm going to call this my flat color layer. And I start scrubbing color in. It's 100% opacity. I'm going over my original sketch, and I'm filling in my basic shape template. Some people think to do a digital caricature, you can just paint right over the photo, and of course you can. That doesn't mean that it's going to be good. It's going to have all the problems that the photo has, and it makes it a lot harder to make artistic decisions. It also makes things like exaggeration really difficult. So I'm going to get the eye in the right place, but I'm going to really play up that shape where it's kind of angled right there. I'm really going to play up the mascara. Making a strong shape on the outside. And instead of erasing, you just paint with your other color. So I'm going to make sure that my dropper tool is set to sample from the current layer. So let's see, what am I actually doing? Well, if I turn off my sketch, you'll see